Hey, how do you feel about some high rarity cards, or maybe some foreign ones, or maybe be ahead of the game with others by preparing for future set releases with very quick shipping? Check out EJ Gaming and use code British5 on checkout for 5% off on all your orders. Link in the description.
Greetings to us and welcome to another video. Age of Overlord is slowly approaching. We're just a few days away for the official release, and then in this next following weekend is going to be the first YCS where this set is legal. An archetype that we haven't covered as of yet and we haven't spoken about, at least on this channel, has been the new Tistina support coming in Age of Overlord. I guess in order to like grasp and understand and like reach a general consensus behind these new cards, I think a little bit of explanation is in order. Back in Duelist Nexus, we've received 7 new cards for the Tistina archetype. Most of these cards had a very solid potential, but one of the big flaws that the archetype had is that it didn't have enough cards to work with their archetype, and we didn't have like a lot of impactful cards that really just swung the tempo of the game like on their own. Like the most potent card was the demigod, and the demigod was like, I won't say it was far from perfect, but it was. I'm just going to be inclined to say that it did had its flaws, and just relying on this to like circumvent your like more important Tistina plays was not like the right answer at the time. Uh, the Crystal God is the one with the most potent effect. However, uh, we only had one real way of summoning it outside of like the actual tribute summon, and that was with Divine Domain's effect. And Divine Domain is a very sketchy card because it relied on your opponent having multiple cards in order for this card to function properly. So right off the bat, with the new, like with the current support that we had before Age of Overlord, Tistina had a few issues. And one of the main issues is it wasn't a really concrete strategy going first. The second issue that we had is that there were no real ways of summoning the Crystal God outside of the Divine Domain, and again, the Divine Domain just relied on your opponent, meaning that we just had a few issues with having this card like resolve outright. So we got 7 more new cards. Out of all those new cards, we had 6 main deck cards and 1 in the extra deck. Konami decided to make the Tistina God, or the actual Tistina monster itself, a XYZ monster. I feel like this is a little bit unorthodox because this monster is not treated as the Crystal God, and in order for most plays to like be done right, like the Crystal God needs to be present. Like the demigod relies on the Crystal God, like Divine Domain makes it so the Crystal God can be summoned. I guess we should talk about the new cards besides the XYZ. Let's start with like Embrace of the Tistina. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you can target that monster, change it to face down defense position. During the end phase, you can target one face down monster your opponent controls, take control of that monster. You can only use each effect once per turn, and you can only activate them while you control a Tistina monster with 3000 or more defense. So right off the bat, this is a really terrible card, and the reason it's terrible is because it has this restriction right here. The only 2 monsters that we have right now that have 3000 defense are the Crystal God and the XYZ. Meaning that there are no real ways of like you really resolving this card unless your plays were already like being done like the most optimal way possible. And we already addressed the issue of like Tistina is not good going first because the only real way of summoning like the Crystal God is with Divine Domain, and your opponent needs to control more monsters for you to do so. So this card is pretty much a flop. Discordance of the Tistina. Basically, TLDR, this card banishes from the graveyard. If you control the XYZ, you can banish the entire graveyard. This effect is really strong against like graveyard centric decks. Like, take for example, you're facing against like Manadium or Tear Element or like Infernoid or something like that. All those really graveyard reliant decks are just going to outright lose to this card resolving. But again, in order for you to do that, you need to control the XYZ monster, and we already established that like getting to the XYZ monster is not like the easiest thing to do in this deck, especially if you're not going second. Let's go with this one. Fallen of the Tistina. You can send this card from hand or field to your graveyard. Place one Divine Domain. Face up to your field zone. If a face up Tistina Spirit Trap you control is destroyed by your opponent's card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card. A special summon one Light Tistina monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this is both the best and the worst effect. So upon activation, it puts the Divine Domain onto your board, which is not that bad going second. Like, this is strictly a going second card because not only does it get you access to the Divine Domain, but if you're in the off chance your opponent tries to destroy it, you're getting the pluses out of this card. And if we already remember, the Divine Domain already gives you another monster if this card is also destroyed. So right off the bat, this card is fine for what it wants to do. However, the big issue that I have with this card is that it pretty much creates an obstacle for your opponent, but it's not a guaranteed solution. In order for this card to be effective, like, you need to be facing a matchup where they are destroying your cards and not removing your cards. And that might be very beneficial, but against decks like, for example, Tear Elements, where they just start like bouncing or removing your cards from other means, like for example the Chisu Shufflers can just shuffle this card back. Kaleido Heart can also just bounce back the domain back to the deck. Like, this card is not really that impactful, but it is really good in the fact that it can just put the domain on board against other strategies. Like, for example, if you're facing a deck like Unchained or Vanquish Soul, for example, like, they have really hard time like playing around this card, especially if you open it alongside the Breath of Tistina, because this activates upon any Tistina card being blown up, not just your Divine Domain. So now we go with this one, Play of the Tistina. Basically, this is a monster reborn, or it can special from the hand. It does not target, and I'm inclined to say this is like the best card out of everything being released so far, because again, we already established that one of the biggest issues with this deck is just like getting to the Crystal God efficiently. This card helps you do that. However, like, the big issue I have with this card is that it does bounce the monster you're bringing back in the end phase. I guess Konami just wanted this archetype to be a little bit fair by giving it a restriction like that one. They pretty much just don't want you to just sit on the Crystal God like turn 1 and just make your opponent have to think twice about it. Or maybe it's just like a contingency plan to force your opponent to like play around this, or just you force yourself to XYZ over the monster you're bringing out, like for example the Crystal God. We got Return to the Tistina. Basically, this targets a monster, it copies the level, it can special summon itself. It's a kind of a shame they can do that it does that effect, because this is level 2, which means in hindsight you could play like a deck that can just summon totally awesome. This is a level 2 Aqua monster, so you can use it for that specific scenario. However, this card is made for other purposes, especially with the level 10s. Not a bad card at all. At the end of the day, it's pretty much just an extender, and it doesn't really lock you into anything. Also, it can give itself some material to an Aqua Expressing monster. So in the options, you summon like the Divinity. You can equip the returned, and it's just an extra material. And if you end up just attacking like with the Divinity, you can even make a 4 material Zeus over it if you just so wish. I guess the last one is Tinta de Tistina. You can trigger this card using set monsters your opponent controls. This card becomes level 10 if it's normal set. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Tistina monster, any Tistina monster. It can attack twice. However, you can only attack with one monster. So they pretty much made this card in order to facilitate OTKing with the XYZ. I will get to the XYZ in a second. But yeah, this card is pretty much just made for that. My biggest issue with this card is that, one, it is not a light Tistina monster, it is a dark Tistina monster, meaning that it doesn't synergize with the rest of the cards. Also, like, this card becoming level 10 upon normal summon makes it a little bit awkward. Like, it's pretty much put into the agenda that you need to XYZ over this thing, with this thing. And once we explain the Tistina monster, you cannot want to be in a position where you have both the Crystal God and the Tainted Tistina in order to OTK your opponent. It's kind of weird that, like, at the end of the day, the Hound of the Tistina has a win condition, but now that win condition is kind of null and void because of the win condition that you are predicated with the Tainted of the Tistina. Now let's go with the last card. Tistina, the Divinity that defies darkness. Basically, this card sends all face down cards your opponent controls to a graveyard. So it's pretty much similar to like a Visor Shock effect. Also, once per turn, if this card has the Crystal Goddess material, you can detach one XYZ material and it gains 2000 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. If this card you control is destroyed by your opponent's card, you can special summon one Tistina monster from your graveyard and it does not target. So, this is what I was talking about, how Konami like tried to give us a win condition like in the last set, and then they just tried to switch it up and make it so the win condition is more gravitated towards this card. I don't see the point of Hound making it so your monsters can attack directly. If you're just going to make a boss monster, it's just going to get rid of all the set cards entirely as a whole. So now that we talked about all the Tistina cards, I guess we should talk about like Tistina in general. A lot of people are not sold on this deck. Pretty much like the general consensus is that Tistina is not a playable archetype by itself. It does not have a really concrete win condition against like the current meta. Like there's only one real matchup where this deck shines against that is a little bit popular right now, and I will showcase it in the replay. Because I do have a replay against that deck. But moving back to the current Tistina support is like this deck is not really strong going first unless you find another win condition or hybrid that can work alongside this. This deck is its main strengths are when it's going second. However, we're at a point in the game where going second is like kind of a hazard, because if you're facing like decks, for example, like Manadium, or like Tear Elements, or like Labyrinth, or like Unchained. I guess Unchained is not a hard matchup, like in theory, but like most of these decks are just going to like outright stop you from playing the game like turn one. Like unless you have like a very concrete win condition, either you play hand traps or you try to like play into the cards that your opponent are summoning with you against you. Like this deck is not as strong going second either. Um, so now that we talked about like Tistina as a whole, let's talk about the concept that I came up with. So I tried a lot of different cards. I tried a lot of different builds. I tried a lot of different things to make the Tistina deck work, and this is what the best that I came up with. Um, Shoutouts to Toon World. They pretty much made a video like a couple of months back when Dune format started, and they showcased pretty much the P.U.N.K engine to be supplementing like the Tistina cards. And basically the purpose behind it is that this is a very easy engine that can just summon a Bitch Balkan. And Bitch Balkan, despite how like ridiculous this card is and how many like FTKs or like crazy things you try to do with it, in this particular strategy, or like in a strategy that involves around your Tistina cards, this card is actually really beneficial for them, because at the end of the day it gives monster to your opponent's side of the field. It can give you up to like 5 tokens, meaning that the Divine Domain of Batistina is going to be very effective, and it will get its effect to summon the Crystal God. So that was like one theory behind it. Another really cool theory is that the P.U.N.K cards help you to get to like Champion Sargas as well as Diabolantis. Diabolantis can just dump the Lily Borea and just start your Therion plays, while you have the Champion Sargas that can just supplement that. Uh, we're playing a bunch of different Therions, like 4 of them in total. This one is here because it mainly synergizes with the Psychic monsters, that being the P.U.N.K monsters. Is just a free summon. Therion King Regulus is pretty much a no-brainer. This is pretty much the best Therion monster. Like, you just want to equip other Therions to this. But we do have actual targets in the extra deck, like for example the Champion Sargas or like XYZ Armor Fortress. I will get to this in a second. You have the Therion Reaper. So the Therion Reaper is really strong because at the end of the day, this can target a Tistina card, and that part is relevant because it makes it so you can special summon with the Demigod, and it also makes it so you can have a free fodder for Sentinel the Tistina to pop and just add another Tistina card. This deck is kind of has a blessing where it has multiple cards that can just search each other in the archetype, and like if one cycles into the other one cycles into the other one. So like Tistina is not super redundant in that regard. But yeah, pretty much the Reaper is here to just give it another dimension. It also works with the other Therion cards. So that's mainly why it's in there. The P.U.N.K monsters, like, they not only do they help make Bitch Balkan, but a bunch of these P.U.N.K monsters are level 3, and that does come up because you can make the XYZ Armor Torpedo, which then becomes Fortress, which then dumps you, like, grabs you the full Armor XYZ. So you have like your full Armor XYZ interaction as well as the P.U.N.K interaction. And if you resolve the entirety of all of that, that's like a +5 or a +6. Like, you're getting 2 free draws out of the extreme session. You're getting 2-3 adds out of your like P.U.N.K monsters. You're getting an extra draw out of the torpedo, and then you have like an extra add out of Armor Fortress. That's pretty much like a +6, like if everything resolves. And all of that can be possible with just like one emergency teleport. Another really cool thing is you're drawing cards into your combo, meaning that in the options you end up drawing into like a Tistina workable card, like for example the Breath of Tistina or the Domain, or like stuff that can work alongside the Demigod. Then you have your full Tistina package into rotation, which is also really, really cool. We're not maxing in like all the Tistina cards or anything. However, Sentinel, Breath, and Domain are like the more important ones. This also is really, really strong. Like, well, not it's not super strong, but it also makes it so you can fight with other decks going second. You will see in the replay that there is one deck that just folds to like all the Tistina cards, and just there's no real way for that deck to play around it. So let's go with extract. Racing Carp, Mantis, Drive, Wish Vulcan, Amazing Dragon. All these cards just work with the P.U.N.K cards. Zeus is here because we do play multiple XYZs. We have access to Sargas, we have access to the Tistina, we have access to the XYZ Torpedo package. So I just felt like Zeus can naturally just fit in the deck. Especially if you end up trying to go with the Tistina play involving like the return of the Tistina as well. So for links, we have IP, Spider, SP, and Lackluster. Basically, if you resolve like all your Tistina cards, like you're just getting free bodies on the board, meaning that just making IP and linking it up for SP is like super easy. Not just going first, but going second as well. We also have the Blackluster Soldier. This deck has a lot of high level monsters, meaning that this is like a link monster that you can just link into that really just like works with the deck. Also, we have Link Spider. The main reason that's here is because of Bish Vulcan. We don't want to like clog up our zones and not being able to like summon any more monsters just because Bish Vulcan resolved and there was no way to get rid of the tokens outright. With the Divine Domain and just summoning the Crystal God, you are free to like just banish everything from your opponent's field. So you wipe away all the tokens, not meaning that you don't have to worry about the opposing side for Bish Vulcan. However, you still have the issue of like clearing up your zones with all those tokens. So that's where the link monsters come in. Now that I showcased you the deck, let me show you like a replay because I know a lot of people are going to be curious just like with what the deck can do. And this is against Starfix. Basically, they're both they're playing Vanquish Soul. And like when it comes to Vanquish Soul, like that, this is the Tistinas are really hard matchup for them because basically the way it works is that if you go second and you try to like activate like the Divine Domain, your opponent pretty much has like two choices. Either they play around it and they make it so they don't summon the Rock of the Vanquisher, or they don't play around it by resolving Rock of the Vanquisher, but it just plays into the Divine Domain. And them popping the Crystal God does nothing because basically the Crystal God will just get its effect to just set everything face down anyway. Like here, right here, we're just looking at Razen. Razen is revealing, and Jolong is revealing. And like he's starting to like gain card advantage that way. And now they made the Rock summon into Mad Love grabs the Snow Devil. And like as strong as this play might look, like them summoning Baguska really just made no sense. Like this just goes to show you that this matchup is going to be strong if they don't read your cards. So basically, the Breath of Tistina can target an opponent's monsters if you control a light Tistina monster. Since we control the demigod, that means we can just set the Baguska and we can just keep playing, which is also really, really strong. Like, basically he has to rely on these two cards plus the Ash Blossom from now forward. We add a new demigod. We activate the Fallen. Fallen activates the domain. We activate the demigod. We grab the play of the Tistina. And this is really, really strong. Basically, the Divinity is going to make it so it wipes out the entire board, except for the rock. But we already established that, like, the rock is just going to make it so it plays into the Divine Domain. So, like, it really doesn't matter how you play it. Like, this is a really tough matchup for Vanquish Soul. And you don't really care about them popping your cards. The only card that you want to resolve, like, is the Crystal God. And the Crystal God just makes it so, like, it applies pressure to the opponent. So, now he flips, continue, everything gets wiped out. I tried to Foxy, he tried to Ash, I tried to do the Duke play. I revive with the Sentinel. Those two link into SP. SP banishes the Rock. Rock is going to chain. We're going to chain SP. And yeah. Like, pretty much the entire board was wiped. We targeted with SP, but, that was a given. So now my opponent prosperities. He grabs into talents. And, like, we just try to play into the talents. We just let it go through. And, like, at the end of the day, like, we're not really worried about what our opponent can do, because there's no real way for them to out, like, the Tistina without destroying it. In the off chance they do destroy it, it's just going to make it so we can just special summon anything from the grave. And yeah, we're trying to do Discordance. Discordance resolves. He goes into Zeus. We try to summon with the play of the Tistina. So we do Discordance effect to grab back, like, the demigod. Since we didn't, since it was already engraved this turn, and now this is the play that comes up. So since the Therion equips itself to the Crystal God, we now control a Tistina card, meaning that the demigod can special summon, and we can just add with the demigod. So in this game, I pretty much will lose the duel. You're going to see in a second. But we kind of misplayed, because I completely forgot that you can bring back the Sentinel of the Tistina. I kind of let it go through. And he's just going to Zeus and we're going to wipe out the board. So now we're going to the second game. This is a P.U.N.K hand, pretty much. Looking at the rest of our hand, we pretty much have the full combo, the P.U.N.K combo that we talked about. Sadly, he ashes, so pretty much we don't get the full access to the combo. Pretty much our opponent kind of bricked, but as you will see here, it just kind of works out. We do the XYZ play, and we just set to impasse. Basically, the Ash kind of denied us of the extra pluses that we would have gotten if we resolved the entire, like, P.U.N.K engine. However, I think this play works just as fine. I also misplayed with the P.U.N.K engine. I think it could have been played a lot better. So he prosperities, grabs Fenrir. I think immediately after he just wrote us. Yep. So now I full armor, And the reason we do that is because they're entering the battle phase. There's summoning Rise Heart adds, we summon, and so right here he's adding with Rosin. And now what we're going to do is we're going to equip the full armor. What this is going to do is going to equip the torpedo, and not only that, but it will gain the attack of whatever you're equipping. So this is currently at 31. It will equip itself to this, which is 25. So basically it's going to be 5600 attack. So we go on with the next play. It equips, and I guess I should explain this. The full armor also gives the effect that if this would get blown up, you can just get rid of whatever is equipped to it instead. And the torpedo says that whatever is equipped cannot be targeted. So yeah, right now this Dark Lancer is going to be very hard to get rid of. We're making the full armor Lancer pretty much just triggers in order to just attach a monster that does not target, meaning that even if he had a monster to tag out the rosin, that monster would just get ended up attached to this card. So this card is really strong against Vanquish Soul in that regard. So now he summons the Jawlong because he revealed with the rosin. He turns it into rock. He grabs rock from graveyard. So we're in the main phase. He tries to rock. Rock plays into the Jawlong, and that plays into the Divine Domain because he controls 3 monsters. We can special summon the Crystal God. But the Crystal God was already in the graveyard. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to activate Play of the Tistina. That sets everything. We're going to summon with the Sentinel. Sentinel pop itself. We'll add the Breath. We ended up getting drolled. I just asked about like the stats. Basically, we're doing SP and Deer. We're going to equip that attacks. I forgot to gain 2400 life because of Foxy's effect. And like now we're in a really winning position because if we look at like CR Fix's extra deck, it pretty much like almost gone. Most likely those are 2 copies of Rock the Vanquisher. Yeah, he activates Staker Soul. He reveals Dr. Madlove. He grabs Continue. And now he can continue into like Rosin. Rosin will also add. So now Rosin is going to trigger. We're going to chain SP Little Knight. He's going to chain the Borger. That way we don't lose the Foxy Tune. He summons Jawlong, reveals 2. He's going to add. And now they attack. He links away into Rock. Rock grabs back the Jawlong. And the Matlove gets added back to hand because of Staker Soul. So he's now doing Heavy Burger's effect. He draws. He summons Jawlong. And you know, this is pretty much like an update to like what you're going to see moving forward. I think Vanquish Soul is like, it's not like the best deck out there, but I feel like after this new support, we're going to see this deck a little bit more than not, because Jawlong really actually helps the deck a lot. However, you're going to see very soon that, you know, it's just going to be like it's just going to be like pretty much a predicated like victory for like Tistina, because we just gained too much advantage out of these cards. And this pretty much just goes to show you like the Tistina cards are really good if they end up resolving, but they don't really have a concrete win condition, and that's where the P.U.N.K stuff comes in. Basically, you're just going to give it more layers of interaction. You're just going to give it more plays. We now try to do the Crystal God effect. He changed Jawlong to add. He tries to summon Caesar. He tries to summon Rosin. Like, he's pretty much doing everything in his power so we don't resolve the Crystal God. But at the end of the day, Crystal God still ends up resolving. because it also triggers when it's destroyed. So pretty much everything gets set. We summon here, we do black BLS, we attack with the BLS and we just make it so it gains attack. This is really hard for Vanquish Soul to get rid of. Like, it can't be targeted, so Fenrir cannot do anything. It can't be destroyed, so you can't Razen over this or Caesar over this either. And right now it has 4500 attack, so there's nothing that really that's just like getting rid of it on the spot. Like, this card also doesn't lose to the Snow Devil trap, so like unless they're playing Trinity Burst, which not many Vanquish Soul players are even playing, like BLS is going to be ridiculously hard to out. So my opponent also did a misplay here. So they used Caesar's effect to pop the Breath of the Tistina, and that's just played into the Tistina cards because Fallen the Tistina makes it so if any Spirit Trap leaves the field by your opponent, or is destroyed by your opponent rather, you can banish this to just summon the Crystal God. So now our opponent is in a very not favorable position because we can just demigod and just set whatever is attacking. They add Dr. Madlove. They're trying to do Burger and Madlove effect, or just Burger. We're going to do Burger to burn instead of drawing, and that makes it so he can trigger Jiaolong. Jiaolong will get this summon. They add Razen, and they pretty much scoop. Like, they realize that the Crystal God is just very hard to get rid of, and you know that's pretty much like what makes it this like a very easy matchup for like against Vanquish Soul. Then it can go into Rock into Razen, Razen into Burger, like they said in pass. Pretty much, so we activate the Fallen to Tistina. That makes it so we activate the Domain. Domain will make it so we can summon like the Demigod, and the Demigod will just grab the Breath. So this is again our opponent just trying to make it so they can play around everything. So we're doing the Domain. Since he controls 3 or more face-ups, we can special summon the Crystal God. He blows it up. We activate Crystal God effect. And yeah, now we're going to do our P.U.N.K plays, and we pretty much have the +6 combo that I was talking about. So pretty much summon, fuse into Rising Carp. Rising Carp summons Wagon and the Deer Note. Wagon effect. We activate it. We do Deer Note. We do Dragon Drive. We draw a card. We banish. We special. Man Spider draws a card. We're going to add us and then draw us. XYZ Torpedo will draw us into another card that grabs into our full armor XYZ. And now we have the Dark Lancer into rotation. And yeah, like, this is just too many pluses. Like, if you resolve the entire P.U.N.K like rotation and just resolve it alongside the armor XYZ package, it's just way too much card advantage. Like, now we're going to like blink away. We're going to do that. It also, yep. We also summon the Sentinel back. The Sentinel can pop the full armor XYZ, and that makes it so we have the graveyard effect. And now he reveals, he burns. They pretty much did that so they can summon Jiaolong. But yeah, like, after everything is done, we pretty much just win the duel. But yeah, like, this is not like the definitive go-to when it comes to Tistina, but I just wanted to just prove the fact that Tistina is actually not just an unplayable deck. You just need to find the right engine to make it work. But we're also at the situation where Konami should not have made us be at this position. They should have just like given more leeway with some of the Tistina cards. Like for example, I feel like this card should have been traded as the Crystal God. That would have been very very helpful. I also would have wished that like the Divine Domain just served like the purpose of just summoning the Crystal God without relying on the opponent. Like that's another thing. I also would have preferred if the Fallen Tistina would have made it so if your opponent pops anything on the board, you get to summon a Tistina monster, not just your spelling traps. But yeah, like this is like I wouldn't say you should be worried about Tistina, but for example, if you're a Vanquish Soul player and you see somebody playing Tistina against you, you're in for a world of trouble, pretty much. But yeah, that's pretty much it from me. More Age of Overlord content coming soon. Keep practicing and keep dueling.